Cooking is one of the best ways to cause pleasure unto another person. I first met Jean-Pierre at a barbecue party at a friend's house. And they were having barbecue, and he cooked a very, very, very nice strawberry cake, like the one you see here on screen. It was delicious. And while we were eating, he said something that I'll never forget. Cooking is one of the best ways to cause pleasure unto somebody else. I kept thinking about it. It's true. It's true. It's funny that eating started as a basic human need to become one of the most sophisticated experiences you can have nowadays. Michelin, or Michelin, I don't know, pardon my French, it's one of the names that you immediately associate with food sophistication. And I started to read about Michelin, how it started, and it was so interesting that I decided to make it the center of my speech. Let me tell you how it started. 1888, there were two brothers, Edward and André Michelin. They had a rubber factory in the middle of France. One day there was this one guy going by with a bicycle, and then he had a flat tire. And back then it was really, really complicated to remove and replace the tires because it was glued to the rim. So they had this idea, why don't we make an easy to replace pneumatic tire? A few years later, the first patent came out, and then after that, they had the company started. There was only one problem with that. There were only about 3,000 cars in France back then, and it's really, really hard to sell tires if you don't have a car. So they decided to do two things. The first one, they wanted to create a symbol, something that people would easily associate between cars and tires to Michelin. And that was when they came up with the Michelin Man, also called Bibendum. Pardon my French. The slogan at the time was said. That's him drinking there. Back then the tires were white, and that's why he was white until today. It's one of the oldest trademarks that we have nowadays, also the one of the most commonly known. And the slogan said, Nunc est bibendum, which is essentially what it means, let's go drinking. That's not really political today, but what he was meant to say is that you can drink and Michelin will keep you inside the road during all the time. The second thing that they did was to create a guide. A guide, it was targeted towards drivers, where they had the explanations about gas stations, about how to replace tires, about hotels, and of course, restaurants. So the first one looked like this. It was in 1900. So no, that's the cover. And then they had a French edition, then an European edition, and nowadays it's pretty much everywhere, and it looks a bit like this. I couldn't find one at home, so I just have a picture of it. And what was funny to me is that back then they already came up with the concept of the stars, and the definition hasn't changed ever since. The stars, if you go to the door of the restaurants, they actually look a bit like this, which is more like a flower. That was surprising to me. But essentially, the one star means it's a very good restaurant, a very good cuisine, and it's worth a stop at the restaurant. 2 stars means it's a very, very, very nice. The whole experience is very positive, and it's worth a detour. And then 3 star is something exceptional, superlative ingredients. The whole experience is just unforgettable. The dishes are marvelous, and it's worth a special journey there. So when you hear about Michelin stars, what comes to your mind?
France.
Sorry? Okay. That's one thing. In my mind, it also comes good food, sophistication, a nice experience. It's not only eating, it's the whole scenery around it. It became so sophisticated that it's really hard to tell what you're eating nowadays. So I'll let you look at the screen. And this is actually some scallops with black truffles. This one, believe it or not, is a spaghetti dish. And this yellow thing here, and it is? This is the world's best risotto. And the yellow comes from saffron. And for dessert, no, you can have some grapefruit. So things became so sophisticated, it reached our homes as well. And it's funny because when I arrived here, I had my first apartment. I only had like a simple pan and one spatula and a couple of plates. And now I find myself at home cooking with weird things like this. This is a tool with a hole in the middle. Apparently this is the best tool to do a risotto. This is another spoon with holes on the sides. You can go like this and you break an egg on top of it and you get the yellow part in and the white part out. This is a garlic. And this one is a zester grater. And it's only for Parmesan, coconut, and lime. Oh. Anyways. As I told you in the beginning, eating started as a basic human need and has evolved to be one of the most experienced you can have today. Michelin, Ferran Adrià, El Bulli, all these guys have become a big symbol of that, and you immediately associate that. And it's a phenomenon that has happened very recently in world history. These guys work really hard to get Michelin stars and keep it over time. And that's where they're really focused. But at the bottom of their hearts, what they're really looking for is the same thing that Jean-Pierre told me one day, which is to cause pleasure and to as many people as they can. Thank you.